Hi there, welcome to another video. In today's video, we are going to deep dive on this interview question. What are your career aspirations? This is a very interesting question, and every question that you get asked in an interview is a way to sell yourself without selling yourself. And this is one of those where you can do a little bit of hard sell and connect your career aspirations to the job and make it feel like they're making the right choice by picking you. Okay, if you haven't watched the video before, I've got another one which I think is the most critical interview question ever, which is tell me about yourself. Watch that first, because every single interview question that you will ever get asked is in a way connected to that. So go back, watch that video and come back here if you need to. Before we move on, please hit the like, subscribe buttons. It tells YouTube that this is good content and it helps YouTube pick this content and show it in front of the people that need it at the right time. And it also puts a smile on my face. Okay. Why do interviewers ask this question? Why do they want to know about your career aspirations? I mean, they are strangers to you, so why do they care? One, they want to check your long-term career aspirations and how it's aligned to the company or the team. So if your career aspiration needs you to move on quickly in a year or two, then they might rethink if you are the right person for this job, even though you may be a great candidate. So it might help them decide between two very similar candidates. They are more likely to go for the one that has a career aspiration that is aligned to what this team or company needs. Two, it also helps your hiring managers assess your ambition levels. There is no right or wrong ambition level. You could aspire to be the CEO, or you could aspire to just continue to enjoy the job that you already do. Both are okay. But for the hiring manager, it is important to know where you are. So when they look at different things that they have to assess to pick the candidate, it is an important factor for them to consider when they make this final decision. Three, it helps your hiring managers also understand a little bit about yourself, how self-aware you are, and how much you think about your own future. And depending on what level you apply for or what the job is, this may be significant or less significant. I would never call that insignificant. It helps your hiring managers assess how much you know yourself and how much you understand what you want. What is a perfect response to this question? I've watched some videos on YouTube when I search for how to answer what are your career aspirations. I've seen some of the people giving like a copy-paste responses. Steer clear, that's not a good idea, and I will explain why. What makes a perfect response is one, an answer that is well thought through. So when the interviewer listens to your career aspirations in your own words, it's easy for them to understand whether you've thought about it or not. If you've not thought about what you want to do, it also appears pretty flimsy, I would say pretty light, and with one or two questions, your story will fall flat. So one, a perfect response is a thought through response. Two, a perfect response is also a very clear response. A very clear response does not equate to a very specific title or very specific career path. It means you are pretty clear in your thought process. Yes, it is connected to the thought through response, and it lays out very clearly why this is your aspiration. So there is no ambiguity around what you are saying. Three, a perfect response accounts for realities and understands the limitations and the potential. So when you talk about where you want to be in 5 years or what your career aspirations are, you have a pretty decent understanding of what is possible, and you also have a pretty decent understanding of what limitations. So for example, when if you are a developer and this is your first change or a second change in your career, and if your career response is I want to be the CEO of Meta or Google by the time I'm 30, that is a pretty, I wouldn't call that as a bad response, but it is an unrealistic response, right? I mean, there's probably one role with this title in that company, and there's hundreds of thousands of people already working in that company, and there's probably millions of other professionals aspiring to get there, and there's probably 20-30 years of experience that you'll need to accumulate to even dream about it, unless you get really lucky. So if you give a response that doesn't account for realities and doesn't account for what it needs, it also falls flat. So to sum up, a perfect response is well thought through, clear, and accounts for the potential and the realities. Okay, let's look at some of the do's when you respond to what are your career aspirations. 1, and you will always see this in all of my videos. I hope you subscribe to my channel because this probably will be the most often used phrase in my videos. Be authentic. The more authentic you are, the less harder that you have to work in any response during the interview. It could be tell me about yourself, it could be this question, it could be why should we hire you, or it could be anything else. The more authentic you are, the easier it is for you to respond to any question. Number 2, explain why you want it. So let's assume that your career aspiration is to get into a leadership role. Explain why. Explain your personal motivation of why being a leader, being accountable for something matters to you. So when you talk about your career aspirations, remember it is your professional life, but almost every professional aspiration is connected to something personal. So if you want to be a leader or a mentor or just be an expert, explain why it matters to you. So when you connect your story, remember, and I would still highly recommend that you go back to this video about tell me about yourself. This is your life story, and this particular question, what are your career aspirations, is just deep diving on one aspect of your story, but your entire story is coherent. So when you say I'm a person that loves to understand what I do in detail and I love to be the subject matter expert, and if this is what you said in the beginning when you were talking about yourself, this is a great opportunity for you to connect that back. And remember, the more coherent your responses are and the more connected their responses are, your interviewer may not think about it at the moment, but they are going to be pretty impressed. So explain your motivation, explain why where you want to go matters to you, what it means to you personally. 3, acknowledge what you will need to get there. So let's say that you said you want to be an expert, then it means that you also understand that you need to improve your skills. You probably need some education, or you just need a lot more time doing this work to become an expert. So acknowledge that that is what you will need to do. So you could say your aspiration is to become an expert in this certain area, and you understand that you will need to keep working. Let's take an example where you say you want to be an expert in an area. Let's just take a developer and then say he wants to be an expert in generative AI technologies. I'm just picking an example, don't validate me for this. You could say, I understand AI is developing now and there's no telling where this technology could go. So I want to be an expert on this area, but for me to feel like I've become an expert, I will need to spend a few years in these technologies trying to develop this, that, and something else. And maybe once I have the opportunity to do it, I think I would be closer to where I want to be. This could be in 5 years, could be in 3 years, but this is where I want to be. And I also disagree when somebody puts a timeline to it, because the way the technology is evolving, it's hard to say whether it needs 3 years, 5 years, or 20 years. Remember, if you watch Back to the Future, there's a lot of stuff that we do in the 2020s in the movie, and we are probably not even 10% to it. And there are a lot of other things that we've knocked it off the park that the movie writers couldn't even imagine 30, 40 years ago. So there's no way to tell with the speed the technology is moving how long it might take. So talk about where you want to be and what you think might need to be done to get there. But if you're unclear and if you're not sure, don't put a timeline to it, just put a range. To sum up the do's: 1, be yourself. 2, explain your personal motivation and your personality to why you want to be on this path. And 3, acknowledge what you will need to do to get there. If you want to be a leader or an expert or a mentor or anything else, do acknowledge that you will need to do some work to get there. Very importantly, let's now jump into the don'ts, what you should be aware of when you respond, and maybe stay away from this. 1, and I've been doing a lot of interviews, and one of the biggest turnoffs from me is being unreal, saying something just to impress the interviewer. So 1, stay real. Don't say anything that you say just because you want to impress the interviewer. Interviewers have seen many candidates and they've seen many versions of this, and they know the reality as well. Remember, I've been doing this for 20 years, and so have been many of the hiring managers. So when they say, where do you want to be in 5 years, or what are your career aspirations? When you say something that is completely wild, they can see that. And when you do something like that, it turns them off because it tells them that you have no idea what you're talking about. So when you have no idea where you want to be in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years, that doesn't say a lot of great things about you and also your preparation for this interview. So 1, stay away from saying anything wild or unreal. 2, don't go unprepared for this. I mean, I would say this of every question, but this one is a little trickier because this is not about the job, this is about you. So when you're unprepared and when they poke a little further, so let's say you want to be an expert and they ask, have you thought about what skills you will need to acquire to become an expert? And if you didn't have an answer for that, this is also going to look a little bit silly, because then you say that you want to be an expert and this is your passion, but you have no idea what to do next. In some cases that might genuinely be true and the interviewers also know it, but in most cases people should have some idea about what to do between now and when you want to reach your desired state of being an expert. 3, don't overdo it, don't over justify. So you said this is where you want to be in your career at some point in the next 5, 7, 10 years, and leave it for the interviewer to ask more. You don't need to stay on that story and over justify yourself or explain yourself. Remember, the purpose for the interviewer is to get a glimpse of where you want to be, not necessarily get your entire life story. And if they want to deep dive on something, they are going to ask you. So stay on this for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, but not longer. So let the interviewer ask, and then you can give responses that justify why you said what you said, but let them initiate that conversation. 4th, and a very, very important thing, don't be incoherent. When you tell about yourself at the beginning of the interview, make sure this ties back to that story. Remember, watch the video again. Your story needs to be where you started, where you are, and where you want to be, and also tying that to why you are in this particular job interview today. So if your story is not coherent, and if this comes out, sticking out like a sore thumb, it's going to show as well at some point. So don't build an incoherent story, and make sure that what you say is tying back to your original response for tell me about yourself. Pro tips, and I don't see this a lot. 1, it's okay to be where you are right now. So for a lot of people, especially people in middle management positions, there's not a lot of room for you to grow. Like if you're head of the department or team leader or manager managing large teams, you could aspire to be more, but we also know the reality. It gets crowded at the bottom, and at the top it starts getting lonelier and lonelier. So there are not a lot of hierarchical movements that you can have when you are probably close to the top or very close to the top. So that is understandable, and it is okay for you to say, I enjoy what I do right now. So my career aspiration is simply to just continue to enjoy doing it and being productive for myself and my organization and helping my team achieve. Something like that is still a perfectly normal response. It tells you that you're very self-aware. It tells you that you enjoy what you do, and it's okay for you to be content with where you are, right? Of course, you also need to have a good motivation to say why you want this job or what you do currently, but that's another video. We'll come to that. 2, and this is probably true for some of the young graduates or people who are in very new industries, you may not exactly know where you want to be in 5-10 years, and the world is just changing a lot. So if we got asked this question 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was easier to answer. The industry was evolving slowly, and you could see people older than you and see where they are in their careers. So if you broadly look at it, there's probably an expert route. So you could become a subject matter expert, you could become a manager, or you could become a consultant / teacher, mentor, these kind of roles. Right now, In some of the industries, you have no idea, where you're going to be in 5, 10 years, right? The world is exploding in some of these areas. So it's perfectly normal to say that you don't have a clear idea where you want to be in 5 years. What you want to do is explore as much as possible, learn as much as possible, and then decide for yourself in maybe a year or two. And right now you don't feel like it would be honest if you knew exactly where you wanted to be in 5 years' time, right? That's a perfectly normal response to say. And as an interviewer, when I hear somebody say that, I actually have a lot of respect for it, because this person has thought about what they want to do, and they're also being pretty honest about it. And they basically put the ball in my court. And if I have to say this person doesn't deserve a place in my team because they're honest, it's my loss, not theirs. So I'm assuming the rest of their skills, experience, etc. still match. But if this is the deciding point, I like honesty over impressive responses. And I know many recruiters think like me here. Alright folks, that is it for the video today. And as I said, YouTube loves it when people engage. So please do like, subscribe to this channel. I have a lot more content coming out. And remember, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm a professional sharing my experiences via YouTube. So if my videos aren't perfect, if they don't have the best sound or the best lighting or the best production values, I'm sorry. I'm here to share my knowledge. I hope you like and share and subscribe anyway. See you in another video. Thanks.